Thank you for that introduction, Marcia. And good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight to discuss food, inflammation, and health. So let's get started. First, let's talk about, excuse me, what is inflammation? It is the body's normal and natural response to injury and infection. It is designed to be protective and to aid in healing and recovery. There are two types of inflammation, acute and chronic. Acute inflammation occurs when you, say, cut your finger, maybe you're cutting vegetables, or you get a cold, or you sprain your ankle. When this happens, your immune system quickly triggers a strong inflammatory response. It may result in pain, redness, heat, or swelling. It lasts for a short time. Its purpose is to heal injuries. Chronic inflammation is often silent and may not have any noticeable symptoms. It can linger quietly for months or years, and if not properly regulated, it can damage tissues, organs, and even DNA over time, increasing the risk of various health problems. Chronic inflammation is associated with heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, cancers, gastrointestinal disorders, and diseases that affect our brain, such as dementia. Also, while chronic inflammation can contribute to the development of chronic diseases, it's important to note that some chronic diseases can also trigger or worsen inflammation. Inflammation can also be a symptom of certain autoimmune diseases, such as multiple sclerosis, lupus, and rheumatoid arthritis. It is this chronic inflammation that we're going to discuss tonight. And I think it's important to keep in mind that many factors may contribute to inflammation. It's not just nutrition or what we eat. Factors such as genetics, toxins, pollutants such as smoking, aging, stress, lack of sleep, and exercise also contribute to inflammation. And these are not in any particular order. Tonight, we're going to discuss how nutrition may help you decrease inflammation in your body. I want you, though, to keep in mind that no single food can act as a miracle for inflammation, but focusing on overall good nutrition and incorporating foods rich in antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds may help reduce inflammation and support your immune system. If you listen to commercials or influencers on social media, you probably hear about products or supplements that claim to treat or cure many of our health issues. And I know that many of us would like a simple answer and a quick fix for inflammation. I mean, that sure would be easier. Unfortunately, it is much more complex than that. It really is not about one specific food or nutrient or component of food. We really need to look at what we're doing most of the time, every day, our eating patterns and other lifestyle factors that create these health benefits. So clearly looking at the big picture. And there are multiple eating patterns that have evidence of anti-inflammatory properties. And these include the Mediterranean pattern, the DASH pattern, which stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, or a plant-forward or a vegetarian eating pattern. So think for a second, what do all these eating patterns have in common? They are all based on eating more foods that come from plants. Plant foods contain phytonutrients or phytochemicals, antioxidants, and fiber. And these plant compounds have been associated with numerous health benefits. They can help to reduce inflammation, strengthen the immune system, protect against cell damage, potentially slowing cancer growth. They promote a healthy gut microbiota, and also they slow down digestion to prevent spikes in blood glucose. And all of these things can help to decrease inflammation in the body. And I want to spend the most time discussing foods that have health benefits. And since I also want to end on a positive note, I will first discuss some of the foods that may increase inflammation in our body. So these are the foods that I would say we want to aim to eat less of, because they may increase inflammation, and also they're the ones that really don't provide our body with many nutrients. They are usually ultra processed. So they would include refined carbohydrates and foods that are high in added sugar, such as soda, desserts, candy, pastries, etc. These foods tend to be made with white flour and therefore they lack fiber. Other pro-inflammatory foods include deep fried foods such as fast foods, French fries, fried chicken, donuts, saturated fats, which include butter, fatty cuts of meat, full-fat dairy, trans fats, also known as partially hydrogenated oils, and they're found in stick margarines, shortening, and some commercially baked goods. Processed high-fat meats such as bacon, sausage, hot dogs, and bologna, and excess alcohol. This does not mean that you should never eat these foods. I do think we need to be mindful of how often and how much we eat these foods. We want to prioritize eating more of the nutrient-dense foods that we will discuss in a moment. Also, these foods, they do provide some health benefits in terms of providing us with some joy. And I always say, right, joy can be a benefit to our health, or it can be joy is a nutrient. So I think sometimes, having these foods in moderation actually helps us to stay on an overall healthier eating plan for the long term. And when it comes to trying to improve eating habits, many people tend to focus on what to limit or avoid. And I really think a much better nutrition strategy is to focus on what can we add to our meals and snacks rather than focusing on what to subtract or restrict. And I think many of us have learned over the years that when we are too restrictive with our eating, we often lose control around food, and we're likely to eat more of the foods that we think are off limits. So I want you just to keep in mind that it's all about balance. It's not, all or nothing. So what should we eat more often? Let's get to the positive part. As I mentioned before, we should plan our meals and snacks to include more of the foods that contain the anti-inflammatory phytochemicals or phytonutrients, antioxidants, and fiber. And these foods include vegetables, fruits, legumes, which would include beans, lentils, peas, soybeans, nuts and seeds, healthy fats, whole grains, and plant-based beverages such as tea and coffee, and also spices and herbs. So as I go through the next several slides, take note of what you can add to your meals and snacks. Okay, and the first goal would be just to eat a variety of foods. This way, we will be consuming all the nutrients that we need for good health, including protein, fiber, vitamins, minerals, as well as those plant-based nutrients and antioxidants. Think lots of color. Vegetables are loaded with anti-inflammatory nutrients and fiber. And it's best to eat a variety of vegetables so you'll get a variety of all those different nutrients. Be sure to include the green leafy vegetables several days a week. They are really loaded with a lot of these important nutrients. So think spinach, kale, broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, collards, Swiss chard, turnip, and salad greens such as arugula, spring mix, and romaine. As well as the other vegetables, including asparagus, carrots, cauliflower, green beans, beets, squash, peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, mushrooms, okra, onions, peppers, and I'm sure I've missed some there as well. The average American gets half of the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables. And really the goal for vegetables is to try to eat 3 or more servings per day, a serving being about a half a cup of cooked vegetables or 1 cup of raw vegetables. And I would say make small goals that you can actually do. Start where you are now and then gradually add more. If you currently go through most of your days not eating any vegetables, say, all right, my goal is to eat 1 vegetable a day. If you're already doing that, then you might say, okay, let me add another one, maybe for a snack or with lunch. Start where you are and just gradually go from there. And you can purchase fresh vegetables, frozen vegetables, bagged, pre-cut, or canned vegetables. I always say go with what fits your budget, your preferences, and your time schedule. Bag greens such as spinach are a very convenient way to add nutrients to soups, stews, sandwiches, bowls, and salads. I find that chopped onions saves me time and also tears from cutting them. So that's another one that I really like to buy frozen. There's lots of vegetables that that you can get frozen that are quite good. And my other favorite way, or my favorite way to cook vegetables really is to roast them in the oven. I think they have the best flavor and texture that way. I also like to saute or stir fry them in a little bit of healthy oil. And you can saute fresh or frozen vegetables. You can saute all kinds of greens like we just mentioned as well. My goal always with my pictures, I figure it's better to look at pictures than words. And I'm hoping to inspire you by seeing food that hopefully looks good to you, that's going to make you want to try some new things or new ways to add these foods into your day. Raw vegetables make great snacks, or they can be served as a side dish with lunch or even dinner. You're much more likely to eat vegetables that are chopped and ready to go. I really recommend spending a few minutes each week or weekend, whenever you have time, just prepping vegetables and putting them in glass or see-through containers. We often think that it's best not to wash the produce until you're ready to use it because it might go bad faster. But if it's washed and pre-cut and ready to go, you will be more likely to eat it. And I always say it's kind of like six of one and half a dozen of the other. I find that I throw away less vegetables when I actually prep them and have them ready to go. I'm just much more likely to eat them. And if you add a little dip, such as Greek yogurt or guac or hummus or a dressing, that will make it, more fun and satisfying. Salads, many anti-inflammatory foods can be added to salads, such as vegetables, fruits, nuts, avocado, and beans. Fruits, aim for 2 or more servings per day. Choose a variety of fruits, again, in different colors. Include your bananas, oranges, grapes, cherries, melon, apples, pears, peaches, plums, kiwi. Of course, different fruits are best in different seasons, so you can go with that. And berries are especially high in antioxidant and anti-inflammatory nutrients, so try to include them regularly. And I often hear from my clients, I work with a lot with patients with diabetes. I often hear that they say that they were told not to eat fruit because it's high in carbs or sugar. And it is true that fruit does contain natural sugar in the form of fructose, but it's also true that they contain fiber and vitamins and antioxidants and are all protective for our health. And here are some visuals of how to incorporate fruits and berries. You can eat them on their own as a snack, or in yogurt, cereal, salads, or in smoothies. You can buy berries and other fresh fruits, fruits fresh or frozen. Sometimes we find that if certain foods go bad quickly, buy them frozen, and that way you can use how much you need and they'll last longer. Next, let's talk about legumes. Legumes include all beans, lentils, peas, and soybeans, and there are great sources of soluble fiber, plant-based protein, as well as other important nutrients. You can get dried beans and soak them. However, canned beans are convenient and are also fine to use. I always say just rinse and drain them to remove the extra salt. Aim to include beans several times a week. This slide shows beans in a black bean soup, a taco soup, vegetable chili, and a lentil soup or stew. Try to include a variety of vegetables to your soups and chili for even more nutrition. Here are some examples of lentil, bean, and edamame salads. The first one is known often as cowboy caviar, and it can be used as a dip with tortilla chips or as a side dish. The next one is a roasted vegetables combined with lentils. Then there's a 3-bean salad with chickpeas, kidney beans, and green beans. So hopefully these will give you some ideas, give you some inspiration. Here are some more ways that you can incorporate beans into your eating plan. You can make or buy already prepared bean burgers. You can make black bean tacos or add beans to your taco meat, such as ground turkey or lean ground beef. You can roast chickpeas with seasonings. They make a nice snack or are good for adding to salads. You can saute beans with greens such as spinach or kale. And of course, there's the classic beans and rice. Soybeans can be used in salads or eaten as snacks as well. Tofu and tempeh are made from soybeans and can be used to provide plant-based sources of protein, and they're also high in fiber. So if you wanted to try some meatless meals, those are some options. And next, we'll talk about nuts and seeds. They also include healthy and anti-inflammatory fats, as well as fiber and some plant-based protein. A handful of nuts makes a great snack. Walnuts, pecans, almonds, and pistachios are excellent choices. Or you can add them to oatmeal, salads, sauteed vegetables. Generally, a portion would be about a quarter of a cup or the palm of your hand, or 2 tablespoons of nut butter. As far as seeds, you can add chia seeds to overnight oats or oatmeal, smoothies, yogurts, or make a chia pudding. You can add ground flax seeds to energy balls or homemade granola bars, and other baked goods. Great way to add some more fiber. And now let's talk about healthy fats, which include the monounsaturated fats such as olive oil, avocado oil, canola oil, avocados. And we already talked about nuts, but since they also have some healthy monounsaturated fats, I wanted to include them here as well. Okay. Research shows that omega-3 fatty acids reduce inflammation and may lower the risk of chronic disease. So food sources would include fatty fish, such as salmon, mackerel, tuna, herring, sardines, trout, swordfish, and catfish. Fish contains the DHA and EPA type of omega-3s. If you're not a fish person, there are plant sources of omega-3s. These include walnuts, chia seeds, and flax seeds. They contain the ALA type. Ideally, it would be good to get both fish and non-fish sources. The ALA type from plants can be converted to the EPA and DHA, but the conversion is very limited to less than 15%. So oftentimes the fish is a better source. And a plant-based eating plan does not mean that you cannot include animal protein foods. They can definitely be included in a healthy eating plan. I would aim to choose leaner cuts, where skinless chicken or turkey or lean cuts of beef or pork, and eggs are also a good source of protein. Again, I think it's really about balance. And when we talk about eating more plants, it does not have to be the exception of eating animal foods, unless that's, of course, your choice. Also include a variety of whole grains, such as quinoa, farro, oats, rice, whole grain, pastas. Variety of grains also make for healthy meal plans. Beverages can include green or black tea. They also have plant-based antioxidant nutrients. Coffee, again, made from plants. Water and seltzer, also, great choices. Choose sugar-free drinks overall. 1 can of regular soda has the equivalent of about 10 teaspoons of sugar. So that's quite a bit of sugar. So I think the key really is just, trying to make healthier choices with the drinks. And then herbs and spices contain compounds with anti-inflammatory properties, and they can also add a lot of flavor. So I really invite you to experiment with different herbs and spices. Some examples of anti-inflammatory spices and herbs include, but are not limited to, turmeric, ginger, garlic, cinnamon, herbs such as basil, cilantro, parsley, oregano, rosemary, and dried and fresh herbs are both beneficial. So incorporate them into your meals to add flavor and to get some of those health benefits. And then also, I always just like to encourage people to incorporate these nutrient-dense foods into their meals. And one way to do it is by doing sheet pan meals. I enjoy doing this. I'm always looking for ways that are easier cleanup. And I told you before that I love to roast vegetables. And I find that sometimes putting my vegetables, my meat, even my potatoes for my starch and my grain just makes mealtime easier. Or you can always do your grains on the side as well. But it really makes cleanup easier. And when you have leftovers, if you're cooking this way, they're great for using in bowls. So that's another meal idea that can also help you to incorporate so many of these important nutrients into it. I always say include a protein, include lots of vegetables, some of those bad greens, beans, lentils, soybeans. You can add some grains such as quinoa or farro or barley, brown rice, avocado. You can use leftovers or start fresh when you make your bowls. And depending on your combo, you can top the bowl with some nuts or seeds, fruits, some olive oil and vinegar or lemon juice for flavor. It's a great way to combine lots of nutrient-dense ingredients. One-pot meals are also great because you can get several meals from one batch. I would say, again, it's easier cleanup. And then after you make your big batch, you can divide and freeze them into single serving portions, or you can use and you can use frozen vegetables and canned beans in these meals as well. Okay. And I think a nice way to end a meal is with a small piece of dark chocolate, which also provides antioxidants and usually has much less sugar than a dessert such as cake, pie, or cookies. Ideally, if you can have a chocolate with 70% more of the cacao or cocoa, that has more health benefits as well. But even if you really don't like the dark chocolate and you prefer, a milk chocolate, I still think, a small amount after the end of the meal often can really just help make, the meal end on a nice note. And remember, as I said at the beginning, nutrition is important, but it's not the only factor that impacts chronic inflammation. So to help stay healthy, also focus on getting adequate sleep. Both quality and duration of sleep can impact inflammation. So aim for that 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Be active. Regular physical activity has anti-inflammatory effects as well. Aim for at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity activity a day on most days of the week, and walking is great. And it doesn't have to be all at one time. I often encourage people to do, 15 minutes twice a day, or even 10 minutes 3 times a day, or just start where you are and just gradually try to add some movement in your day. And also practice stress management, such as deep breathing, meditation, or yoga, or whatever helps you to relax. And I hope that you will take some time after this class tonight to reflect on how you can add more of these anti-inflammatory foods that we just discussed into your meals and snacks. But also remember, it's not about being perfect. It is what we do most of the time that really makes a difference. So be patient and kind to yourself while you're trying to improve your health. We do best when we focus on small, doable goals. So think of a goal that you would like to focus on going forward, maybe to really practice going, into the next week. Think of, can I add one more fruit or vegetable each day? Can I choose nuts and fruit for a snack? Can I incorporate beans or lentils into a meal this next week? And then you can always add goals gradually from there. Okay. Well, I've come to the end of my part of the presentation, so thank you so much for joining us. And we will, as Marcia said, take questions at the end of the program. But now I'm very excited for the second part of our program where you'll get to see a live cooking demonstration. So I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Marcia, for that next introduction. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you. And Shauna, can you unmute?
Oh, and I'm going to unshare.
Hi, everybody.
And I will introduce Shauna. Great job, Mindy, as always. We will get to questions at the end. We are so happy to have Shauna join us. It's Shauna's first time with us. And I saw her at another, was a 2-part series on, I guess it was anti-inflammatories also. It was so wonderful. And her organization is great. I'll tell you about her shortly. So I was so happy that she could join us for the cooking demo part tonight.
Thanks, Mindy. And thank you, Marcia. That presentation was incredible. You've teed me up just right because I'm doing a sheet pan meal and I'm using a lot of spices today. So I just wanted to say a little bit about Grow a Row before we get started. America's Grow a Row is in Pittstown, New Jersey. All of the food that we grow on our farm is donated to hunger relief organizations in 24 states across the country. We half of that produce stays in New Jersey, and we work with community organizations all up and down the East Coast into the Midwest and Texas to distribute the food to food pantries, food banks, and community organizations. It's my job to help people learn how to eat that food. So I work with organizations all over New Jersey and nationally to do cooking demonstrations and help organizations create education programs to make it easier and more delicious to eat fruits and vegetables. Today, we are actually going to be making something very similar to some of the sheet pan meals that you saw on Marcia's presentation, so that was great. The first thing I want to say about our education at GrowRo is that cost and time is always at the front of the things that we design and deliver. So I have 3 kids. We've got a really busy schedule, and I don't have time to grocery shop every day. I don't have time to cook every day. And so a lot of the knowledge I bring from my work in restaurants into my home is what I try to translate for folks in their home. There's so much nutrition education information, so many recipes, so much cooking information online and on TV. And on social media, it can be very easy to get overwhelmed with everything that's out there. So we really focus on bringing it back to basics at GrowRo. And so today I'm going to be making roasted cauliflower with cherry tomatoes, olive oil, a red onion, and spices. And it's going to be on a sheet pan, which is my favorite way to cook vegetables. Today I'm not adding any protein. It's just going to be that combination of produce. I'm going to be playing with spices though, because like Marcia said, not only are they great for our health, but they make things delicious. And spice blends are a really easy way to make something really, really yummy quickly, and to have fun, right? So a lot of people ask what I bring from my culinary career into my community health career. And it's really a focus on helping people celebrate, helping people feel confident and a part of a community, but also that it's really, really delicious, because the best food for you is the food that you'll actually eat day after day, week after week. It's easy to feel really inspired by cooking shows or by magazines or by cookbooks, but if you're not actually putting that into practice to see the results, I never want to be a part of that part of the food ecosystem. So today we're going to make something really, really simple and really, really flavorful. And please ask questions in the chat. Questions are my favorite. I love learning about how people cook at home themselves. So if I'm doing something that reminds you of something that you do at home, can you please share? That's something we always do in our cooking classes, is we really want our participants to make sure that they are learning from each other, because I have my experience with my cultural background and my professional background, but the most interesting things I learn are from other home cooks that come into my kitchen. So I'm going to angle this down so you can see my cutting board, and I'll just show you a little bit of what we're going to do today. So the thing about this meal is that you can do it with any kind of produce. I have broccoli and carrots and peppers here today, just to illustrate all of the different colors that are available to us. But I love cauliflower. It's my absolute favorite vegetable. All of my kids love it. It's really versatile. We eat it in falafel pockets. We put it on salads. I even mix it into my scrambled eggs. And so it's a really, really delicious vegetable, and it sort of takes on the flavor of however you season it. Tomatoes, because they were on sale when I went to shop for this. Most of my classes and most recipes that I decide are based on the sales section of ShopRite or Stop and Shop when I go to shop. And today these were $2 for the pint. And then red onions, because they came in my CSA box. So part of the reason we don't do really hard and fast recipes at GrowRo is we're not quite sure what people have at home. And so we want our recipes to be adaptable. A lot of our participants are shopping at the food pantry, and so they can't really predict what's going to be available to them. Or someone like me, I get a lot of produce from our local farmers, and whatever is in season is what I have to work with. So these are the 3 things that we're really going to work with today. We're using olive oil, and then I'm going to be using a tandoori masala mix that I have, which is just an Indian spice mix. It smells really, really good. It gives a lot of flavor, and it's really easy because it's one mixture. But you could use anything from like oregano, cumin. There are so many spice mixes at the grocery store. You can do any sort of salt, no salt added mix, like Mrs. Dash's is really great. Creole seasonings. If there's salt added, just be really careful to know that so that you don't add more salt to your dish. So I'm going to put the tomatoes in here first. I'm going to cut up the onion, and I'm going to cut up the cauliflower. And I have seen cauliflower cut a million ways. I taught a class this week, and somebody there just did it totally by hand because they weren't really comfortable with their knife skills. And that made me think about what a great task that would be for a younger kid in the kitchen, to be able to break apart cauliflower or broccoli with their parents. But I just run my knife through it really quickly. and I want to get it into bite-sized pieces. When you're roasting vegetables, there's a wide range of times and temperatures depending on the produce that you're cooking with. So something that's more tender, like broccoli or Brussels sprouts or even cabbage, is going to roast for less time. And then something like potatoes is going to cook for a longer time. I love roasting at a high heat because I like the caramelization on the vegetables while the inside still stays a little crunchy. But if you're not like comfortable cooking at a high heat, you can start around 350. It's just going to take a little bit longer. Sometimes I cook these vegetables as high as 425 or 450. So if you're feeling like you want a challenge, you're confident, you're going to be in the kitchen, you got a timer, you're not going to get distracted, I encourage you to give it a try. All right, so I'm just going to take this core of the cauliflower out, put the last in, cut the onion up, and put that in the bowl as well. If you don't like cutting onions, like Marcia said, this is a great use for those pre-diced onions. You just throw them in your bowl. I actually really like peeling onions and cutting them, so I think that's from all my time in kitchens. I'm using red onion today because when it cooks with spices, I just feel like it gets this really sweet, sort of tender consistency that I really, really enjoy. But a regular yellow onion would be fine. I think the number one question I get when I do culinary demos is if people need to buy exactly what I am showing. And that's never the case. In fact, if you came to 3 classes and I cooked the same thing 3 times, I'm sure there would be big variations between the kind of produce that I'm using and even the kind of seasonings. Okay, we're going to use olive oil. This is just a squeeze bottle of olive oil, and I use about 2 tablespoons of olive oil for a sheet pan. There are lots of folks that are avoiding oil for various reasons. That's totally fine. You can still cook vegetables on a sheet pan without oil. They're just not going to get as caramelized or as golden, and they'll take a little longer to cook. The oil conducts the heat in a really specific way, which allows it to get really golden brown and to cook a little bit faster. I'm going to use about a tablespoon of this mixture, this tandoori masala mixture. It has cumin, coriander, turmeric, garlic, cardamom, some chili powders, cinnamon, and saffron in it. So it smells really, really good. You can get all kinds of curry powders at the grocery store now. If you don't like the flavor of curry, you can try something like a za'atar, which is a conversation that Mindy and I had a few weeks ago, which is a Middle Eastern spice blend, or any sort of Creole seasonings. I just added some cumin. I'm going to add some garlic powder as well. I love adding a little garlic powder to almost everything, even if I'm using fresh garlic, because it just really intensifies the flavor. Some black pepper. You don't have to use fresh black pepper. You know, the pre-ground is fine. And then a little bit of salt. So I have kosher salt here because restaurant habits die hard. So I buy it in huge boxes and put it in a little ramekin. But any salt you want is fine. When you're cooking something, what you're really trying to do is balance a few things. The saltiness, the acidity, the heat, sometimes sweetness. And so getting really comfortable with trying new combinations and trying to identify what you really like about them. And then going in that direction is a really part of the key of enjoying cooking at home and learning as you go. All of our kids' education at Grow a Row is based on exposing kids to new flavors and teaching them how to describe what they like about them, because that's one of the first steps to becoming a really empowered eater. I'm going to put this on a half sheet pan, and this is a silicone mat. You can see it's well loved. I've had it for years and years and years. You can use foil or parchment paper. I just have a whole stack of these because it makes for less waste, easy cleanup, and everything releases from it, but they're absolutely not necessary. I think I got this one, these from Amazon Basics. All right. So a couple technical things about roasting vegetables. You kind of want everything to be cut a similar size so that they cook at a similar rate. you would like vegetables that cook kind of at a similar rate as well. So something like some fresh baby spinach would burn before the cauliflower was cooked. A big cube of potato wouldn't cook in the same amount of time as it would take for the cauliflower to burn. So you just want to make sure you have a similar sort of family of vegetables together, almost like a similar starchiness or water level. If you wanted to add greens to this, you could add it at the last 5 minutes of cooking, which is something I do a lot. So I would put this in the oven for 15-20 minutes until it was the texture I wanted. And then I would just dump a whole bag of baby spinach on top for 5 minutes, would wilt, mix it together, and that's like a really complete dish. You could also add a can of drained black beans or chickpeas to this, and then you would add that, you know, plant-based protein that Marcia was mentioning and more fiber, which is really lovely. So learning how to get comfortable roasting on a sheet pan and mixing and matching components is a really important skill to learn to be a really confident home cook that can feed your family sort of like easily and quickly on a weeknight. I'm going to put this in the oven. I'll come back and say hello. I'm going to put this in the oven, and I cooked a tray earlier today, so I'm going to bring that out so we can see what it looks like when it was cooked. I'm going to cook this at 425 for about 12 to 18 minutes. I know it drives my kids crazy, the people I work with crazy when I tell them that I don't have an exact time for you, but so much depends on how much you put on the pan, how hot your oven actually is, the texture that you personally like, that you really just have to be confident sort of looking and like checking as you go. It's sort of like tasting as you go, as you season. So I'm going to put this in the oven. I'll be back in 1 second. All right, magic of television. This is what it looks like when it's done. You'll see, I'll just pick it up because it's cooled off. This cauliflower is nicely caramelized on this side, and here it's tender. The tomatoes are nice and collapsed, which is something I really love the texture of. And the onions are nice and soft as well. So this whole dish is going to have a really lovely combination of sweetness, spiciness, really nice texture, a little bit of heat. You know, this could cool down all the way, and I could do a big bowl of salad and then put this on top. And if you have leftover chicken or leftover piece of fish and put that on as well, you know, you can have a meal on the table in less than 15 minutes. It's really the best way to cook. I can cook almost anything, and this is how we eat day to day in my house. I think sometimes people think if they were to come to my house on a Wednesday night, like tonight Wednesday or Thursday, I can't remember, today's Wednesday, that they'd be getting sort of a big gourmet meal. I don't have time to do that. So I would make something like this on a Sunday, when I have time to meal prep and have it in the fridge and then use it as the week goes on. So much of what Marcia said is represented in this dish. This is quick, it's flavorful, it's filled with different fruits and vegetables, it's adaptable to your tastes and your dietary preferences. If you cook ahead, you know, you can set yourself up for success for the week. It's the kind of dish that I start a lot of our lessons with when I teach at Grow a Row, because if you have this one dish in your fridge, you can impact several meals a week by adding more spices, more fruits and vegetables, and trying a new cooking technique. So this is our roasted vegetables. If you go to our website at americasgrowarow.com, there are a handful of recipes available there. We don't have standard recipes for a lot of the demos because so much of it is different. But if you look online and search, you know, roasted cauliflower with tomatoes and red onions, you're going to find some great suggestions there. And I just encourage you to really try to cook to your own tastes, your abilities. If you go onto our YouTube channel, you'll see lots of videos of me. I think that there are 50 or 55 full recipe videos on there now. There's also the recordings of the anti-inflammatory webinars that Mindy was mentioning earlier, plus a whole series on plant-based eating. So you can go there to see some more hands-on demos and conversations that I've had about different ways to eat. I am also available by email if you go onto our website and you want to email me to learn more about our organization. Something I didn't say at the beginning is that we require heavily, we really depend on volunteers. So this year we will host 14,000 volunteers at our farm in Hunterdon County to help us harvest. Volunteer slots are available now. If you're interested in coming to the farm to volunteer with us, you can volunteer as an individual, a private or community group, or your corporation. We work with everyone from Girl Scout troops to Fortune 500 companies that come out and work with us. And we literally could not harvest and distribute the food that we do without the help of the community. We start harvesting in June, and the harvest goes all the way to November. We grow 18 varieties of fruits and vegetables, and all of the farms are in Hunterdon County. So if you have any more questions about volunteering or our mission, you can go to our website and you can find the right people to reach out to there. If you want to learn more about education or nutrition education from me, you can find my contact information there as well. So that is the end of this recipe, but I love questions. They're my favorite. So I would really love to hear the questions that people may have about cooking, produce selection, storage. And if you have any questions about Grow Row as well, I'm happy to work to go through those. In addition to the education, I oversee all of our local distribution. So I work with partners all over New Jersey to get fresh food to them June through November, and to work with pantries and food banks to make sure that they're getting the produce they need to the communities they serve. So thank you very much. I will put all my contact information in the chat, and I am happy to answer questions.
So first of all, thank you so much, Shauna. That was a great demo. We have a lot of questions, which is great. I will go to the chat box first and start with that. I see one hand raised. So let's start with the questions. We have a lot of them. We'll answer as many as we can. I know someone I just noticed asked for your website, Shauna. So maybe you could type that in for everybody into the chat box, and then I will get started. How would one know if one has chronic inflammation?
Okay, well, I can, I'll try to take that one. I mean, I would say for that, I would definitely discuss it with your doctor based on your, you know, a history of medical issues. You know, they might be able to know. I mean, some diagnoses are just tend to normally be associated with some inflammation, especially if the word itis is on it, like arthritis and, you know, some digestive issues also would be, you know, there are some tests, but, you know, I've heard mixed studies about, you know, whether or not they are really good markers, you know, inflammatory markers. So it probably would be best to talk to your doctor about that. And part of the reason why I was very happy to do this talk, even though we don't always know all these answers, we don't even know for sure if these foods are going to definitely decrease someone's inflammation. But we know that when people do follow these types of eating patterns, it tends to improve health of not just inflammation, but, you know, diabetes, heart disease, maybe reduce the risk of dementia, things like that too. So I would assume that we all have a little bit of inflammation going on, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think that something I love about teaching anti-inflammation diet sort of information is that it's sort of evergreen. Like if we want to call it anti-inflammation and that speaks to somebody and encourages them to change or try new things, I'm really happy to do that. But if you look at the eating pattern that was sort of outlined earlier in the slides, you know, and you look across the world at the way that different cultures eat and have eaten for years, that's, you know, those are the building blocks of some of the world's greatest cuisines. So from a culinary perspective, I think it just really holds up, and it's easy to do at home. It's, you know, fresh fruits and vegetables, really well seasoned, you know, and it is easy to do day after day, no matter where you live.
Is it necessary to use organic fruits and vegetables? That's a common question.
That's a common one. Yes.
Mindy, do you have a?
Yes. You know, it really is not necessary to use organic. The important thing is to eat your fruits and vegetables. I really think that's the important thing. And I think that, you know, organic also does tend to be more expensive. And it's not that they're not using pesticides. They are using pesticides. They're just using different pesticides. And some of the pesticides that they're using aren't as effective, so they have to use more. really the studies and from the science-based information that I get my information from, they really say it's not necessary. If it makes you feel better, if you can afford it, if you like to shop from your local farmers, you know, and give them business and use their food, I think that then that's absolutely fine. As a matter of fact, a lot of our produce actually would meet the criteria for organic, but they don't want to pay the price to get that organic label on it. And what I've also learned is that they really jack up the price. They charge consumers a lot more than what actually it costs for them to meet these requirements. So I don't want people to feel that they need to have organic. And some people, I think, just don't eat fruits and vegetables because they might not be able to afford organic and they're afraid to eat conventional. But I would not worry about eating conventional produce. And I would just say, give it a really good, rinse under the water to wash off any pesticide that might be, lingering on it.
Yeah, I
Anything you
totally
want to add, Shauna?
agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And what stood out to me especially were 2 points. Organic fruits and vegetables are expensive in the grocery store. And so if you're telling me that you're not going to eat broccoli because you can't afford the organic broccoli, I would really encourage you to buy the conventional broccoli so that you get it in your diet, because the health benefits are deep and wide. And then the second point that I love that you brought up, which I don't think gets talked about that much, and we're very embedded in the agricultural community here in Hunterdon, is that the organic certification process is onerous and expensive. And so if you go to your local farmers market, you can talk to your farmers about how they grow their produce, and you would be interested. It's very interesting. Like, a lot of them will be very close to sort of the same threshold for organic as you'd see in the grocery store, but they're not going to pursue that because it's 2 or 3 of them working. They have a small plot of land and they're really focusing on growing vegetables. So, I have a vested interest in local agriculture. So if you want to sort of get into your community and get to know your farmers, you'll learn a lot about the way that they grow. And I think that's just as important as anything else.
Does nuts include peanuts?
Good question too. So yeah, peanuts are actually a legume. And you know what, maybe I should add them to my legume slides. Yeah, they actually are a legume. So, and legumes are very healthy as well. So I would say definitely enjoy them. We think of them as a nut because that's the way we use them, and I think they're great for snacks, for putting in, salads, having with fruit. I think it's a great way to eat them. But by definition, yeah, it's actually a legume, but we just think of them as a nut. Yeah, Sean, anything from your experience that
Yeah,
you?
no, same thing. High in protein,
Yep,
good fiber. I
Mhm.
had a meal today with, I had rice noodles, a ton of vegetables, and a fried egg and tofu on it, and I put nuts in that for the crunch and the salt and the extra protein. We go through a lot of lightly salted roasted peanuts in my house. Lots.
Yeah, great way to have flavor and nutrition. Okay.
Quinoa is good for diabetics. Mindy, what do you think about that?
I think it's a great grain choice for people that have diabetes because it also does contain both fiber and protein, more so than a lot of other grains. I have nothing wrong with rice. I have no problem with rice. I think it's fine to eat that. It's a very popular food in many, many cultures. But farro does have more fiber and more protein. Did I say farro? I usually recommend quinoa and farro because they actually have the same amount. I keep them in my office because I talk about them often with my patients, with my clients. But quinoa has 5 grams of fiber and 6 grams of protein per serving, which is about a half a cup, which is really great. And the same with farro. If you want to try another grain, this is just from ShopRite. So if you want to find out, that's the one that I use. And I just think they both have, well, it has a great texture and a great for using in those bowls that we talked about for side dishes.
Yeah, I'm team farro. It's one of the things I teach people how to cook a lot. And for a long time, I really focused on it because it's good hot and it's good cold. And I like grains that, or anything really that's versatile like that. You can just even add a 1/4 cup to a salad of farro, like cooked farro or cooked quinoa. And it just adds that bulk and the fiber and a different texture. Yeah, I love them. I think some people, when I teach, they either love the texture of quinoa or they don't. So if you don't like the texture of quinoa, try farro. It's chewy and delicious and really nutty. If you haven't
Yeah.
tried it before, I highly suggest.
Agree. Yeah, thank you.
Should we be concerned about lead levels in some dark chocolate? I know there's arsenic I've seen, but I know there's some brands, because I looked into that, like Ghirardelli and Chocolove, that had less arsenic. I know
Right.
it's about lead, but
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, there was a few years ago, it was a big thing that came out in the news that they were finding lead and cadmium, I believe it was in chocolate and dark chocolate. And my first thought was, oh my, I'm a dead woman because I eat a lot of dark chocolate. And I have to say, I was very relieved when they came out after testing that Ghirardelli was lower. And that's one of my things. I even love the Ghirardelli chocolate chips. Another thing I keep here. And I always say with most things, the dose is what's the problem. We want to watch the amount we have of all these foods. My thing is that I like to put a little bit of the dark chocolate chips in a little 1-ounce shot glass. I don't know if you can see that, but I find it's like the perfect little amount to end a meal. After we have a savory meal, I think many of us like a little dessert. And we know that desserts, many of them do have a lot of refined carbs and a lot of sugar in them. But I find just having a little treat of a dark chocolate, it could be a Ghirardelli Square, and not, I don't know about the other brands. What I was hoping, and I really haven't looked into it, so I don't know for sure. I was hoping that after they came out with those reports, that the companies were going to look at their chocolate and they were going to be making adjustments. That's what I heard. So I'm kind of hopeful for that. But I would say watch the amount and maybe try to choose one that has been shown to be lower.
I'm a pastry chef, so I'm not qualified to answer this.
Okay.
I love chocolate. So,
Yeah. Hopefully all these fruits and vegetables will somehow balance it out.
Yeah, that's how I approach our family's life. I love to bake from a technical standpoint and from sort of like sharing, community and celebration. And then we eat a ton of like great fruits and vegetables in the meal before. So I think it's a really important part of food, as being celebration. So, find stuff that works for you and look at everything you're eating during the day. But dark chocolate is just sort of a miracle to me. So
green tea or any tea, does it matter if it's caffeinated?
Yeah, so to get those plant nutrients that we're talking about, it really doesn't matter if it is decaffeinated or regular. So I would say either, I usually say or tell most people to stop caffeine, after 2 o'clock or however, depending on their own tolerance. So I would say, variety is always the best thing. Green tea definitely has been shown to have maybe, I don't know, it does have antioxidants, maybe more, but I would say mix it up, whatever you enjoy, go for it. Good question.
Someone was saying McCormick's has good salt-free spices.
Yeah, the grocery store has come a long way with spice mixes. I started doing this work, I guess, almost 10 years ago, and it was really hard to find delicious, lower sodium spice mixes across the board and a variety of them. And now you can go and you can get almost anything, almost at any grocery store. And we're so lucky in New Jersey. There's so many different, like Korean grocery stores, Middle Eastern grocery stores that you can go to as well to sort of explore. My husband was at a spice shop in New York today because he knows that would make me happy for him to bring home spices. So yeah, I think have fun with it.
Are you familiar with an app called Bobby? It claims to provide advice about good and bad foods based on scanning the UPC barcode. If you are familiar with it, is it really useful and accurate?
I'm not familiar with it. Mindy, are you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
And how do I say this nicely? No, it's not accurate. Please, please, please do not base your food choices on that app. And yeah, so, a lot of people that are science-based dietitians and nutrition, scientists, yeah, they talk about him a lot. No, he's very popular on social media. It's called Bobby Approved. And basically, I mean, this is being recorded, so I have to be, but he really is just bashing products that can be perfectly healthy or fine, and he's selling lots of products. He's really just making money, what we, call a grifter. So no, I want to save you your sanity, everything. Please don't use that app. And it leads into, I think it was the next question that asked the difference between processed and ultra processed foods. Well, the problem actually with the Bobby Approved thing is that in one video, he'll actually say something is not good. And then another video, he's saying, or he's reading ingredients that it's on there. He's very ingredient focused. And they talk a lot about things being, to avoid foods that are processed. So that's a good question. So all foods need to be processed to some degree for us to be able to eat them. Even if it's frozen vegetables or we're cutting vegetables, right? There's a certain amount of process that's going on. We don't eat wheat just right from the fields. It needs to be processed. The more processed it is, usually the less nutrient dense it is. Oftentimes they remove things like the fiber, or they, it's really broken down. Think of something maybe like that's ultra processed, probably would be, I don't want to bash any part, but like a food that you can't make at home, they even say. I mean, I'm thinking something like a Dorito or something, like something that's really, really processed. Would be that. But I would say fruits, vegetables, because really canned beans would be considered processed, but it's not ultra processed. It still retains a lot of its nutrition. So
Yeah, olive oil is a processed food.
Yeah.
And olive oil is high on the list of nutrient dense things.
Right.
I'm not familiar with the app. I always joke, like I teach a lot of people. I know I've gotten to a certain age because people ask me about influencers all the time now, and I'm not on social media, so I don't even know who they're talking about. So I'm aging out of that a little bit. But I think that anyone who's making you anxious and nervous about your food choices is something to think about. There is a lot of really, really good advice out there, and it's very basic. Sometimes it's really boring, and it has been, maybe your grandmother told you it, but it really does stand the test of time. Eat lots of fruits and vegetables, beans, seeds, grains, protein that you like that fits into your cultural and dietary preferences, and choose things that you can do over and over and over again. If a diet or eating pattern or a shopping suggestion has such a high threshold to be successful that you let go of it after a day or two or a week or two or a month or two, it doesn't really matter how quote unquote healthy it is, because you're not able to stick with it. So we really want to make sure that you're making choices for yourself and building habits that you can hold on to over a lifetime and you can pass on to your family. Something that has a high list of things that you can never eat or can't be combined, or you can't eat at a certain time. Like I have yet over 12 years of having people hands-on in my classes ever be able to successfully stick to those eating patterns. So that's something I always try to get people to think about from a non-clinical perspective, because I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm not a dietitian. I'm a chef and I'm a parent, and I'm busy. And it doesn't matter how amazing the article is, if you can't stick to it day after day, it's not really going to help you. So that's something I always really want to get people to believe in your own decision making too. A lot of people have a lot of good information from their families or from their cultures that you can lean on. You don't always have to look outwards for new advice.
What knife brand were you using to cut the cauliflower?
Okay, yeah. So you don't have to get this one, but I do love this knife. This is Misen, which is Misen. It is an American company. These knives are made in the style of Japanese knives using German steel in America. They're actually fairly affordable. They're not for a chef's knife. I like the weight of them. They come with pretty handles, which is a nice touch. This is the only knife I use day to day. In my house, I don't have a ton of knives. Here I do have a lot of really beautiful knives that are like in storage because they take a lot of maintenance, and that's not the phase of my life I'm in right now. So this is a workhorse. It's a 8-inch chef's knife. I have this, and I have paring knives that I get from like, I think this was $1.50. This is like the other workhorse in my kitchen. So there's a couple of these. I get a serrated one and another one that's sort of an extension. And this plus a serrated knife will pretty much get you through every kitchen task that you need. There's no reason, unless you are a connoisseur, there's no reason to spend $300, $400 on a knife. It's just not necessary. Find the knife that you will use. It's like the vegetables. Eat the vegetable, buy the vegetables you will eat. Find the knife that you're comfortable with.
I use coconut aminos, someone said. I'm
They're
gonna run through
delicious.
some of these because we're getting a little short on time.
Mhm.
What was the name of the mixed spice? I think that was the garam masala, right? Garam
Yeah,
masala.
this one is a tandoori masala, but it's just because I'm a spice nerd. But
Oh,
garam
okay.
masala you'll be able to find in grocery stores. This is a cool company online that I found during when we were sort of locked at home, and I've been getting from them. It's called Diaspora, but yeah, just go to your grocery store.
Will the recipe be available after the session? You had mentioned that you could go on America's Grow a Row. So that leads into the next question. Can you provide the link name of Shauna's contact information? Okay, it looks like you put America's Grow a Row in there. I see that.
You'll find my email on there somewhere. I'm not quite sure.
Okay, and you
where
said
it
the
is.
recipes would be in that.
Yeah,
website,
so it might not be exactly what I cooked, but if you go through all of our videos and stuff, there you'll sort of pick up on the ethos of how we teach cooking, which is very similar to what we made today.
Okay, we had a lot of thank yous. Enjoyed both people. This was wonderful and informative. Can you post the survey again? I'll do that in a minute or two, maybe when they're busy answering questions. I did put it in a couple of times, but I know when people come on late, it only shows for the people that came before. Great information. Thank you. Mindy, you helped me when I got diagnosed with celiac. It helped to bring some sanity to the chaos of my diagnosis and not knowing what I could and could not eat. So thank you.
The next one was about the dried fruit.
Yeah, do you want to take that one?
Does a dried fruit count as an equivalent to a fresh fruit? For example, dried apricot to a fresh nutrition-wise?
Nutrition-wise. I mean, I think that, yeah, dried fruit is just a nice, convenient way to get in some fruits. I think it's great for snacks. It's great to put in recipes or cereals or, baked goods or, with nuts. So it is, the water's taken out, so they tend to be smaller. So that's where we just have to be mindful because it's easy to eat a lot of them because they're smaller, but they do, kind of pack with nutrition and calories. But so I guess technically, I don't know, I usually would say a serving of apricots would probably be like, 3 or 4 would be fine too. Prunes are a great choice. I love raisins. I think it's another way just to add some fiber and
Yeah, I love dates.
sweet
I
dates.
love them. I eat them on toast with peanut butter like several times a week because they're so sweet, but they've got
Yeah.
so much fiber and
Yes.
yeah, I love them.
I put those in my oatmeal and my
Mm.
cereal and
Yeah,
It's a
they
great way to
rehydrate
access
really
goodness.
nicely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
thank you for your time. I did put the survey back in for those that were asking. I find it difficult to cook for one versus more and tend to get very bored of food very quickly. Like I may be able to eat the same food once or twice, but then I need variety. I feel like I need to cook every day, then my desire to eat healthy will decrease because I don't necessarily like cooking.
I get it. Yeah, I feel this. Even though I'm a professional cook, if I had to cook every day, I don't know how that would go. I think the key here is if you have the ability to and the resources, is to build a pantry of sort of sauces and toppings. I call them crunchies, like, nuts or things like that. So that if Rhonda had a great suggestion, having the bowls. So if you have plain rice cooked and plain broccoli cooked and some plain chicken cooked, depending on how you dress that, it can take you to different parts of the world. You can change, if you have fresh lemon juice and fresh parsley on it, that's one thing. If you put a little bit of soy sauce and some sriracha, then that's another thing. If you like things like kimchi, that's something that's great. A fermented vegetable product like kimchi or sauerkraut, which is so good for your microbiome and is in the fridge, that takes you in another direction. And so I think that having, like, I always have plain rice in my fridge because we are my rice monsters in my house. We just put rice with everything, but all 5 of us could make a totally different dinner with a bowl of rice and the same vegetables, depending on what we pulled out of the pantry. So I get it. Cooking, I think during when people had to stay home for those for that stretch of time, I got a lot of questions because people were like cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for their families or for themselves, and it gets really monotonous. It's tough, but yeah, getting some fun pantry ingredients, fun hot sauces if you like heat. I always say that our fridge, our drawers and stuff are really basic in my house, but my pantry is pretty deluxe. I have a lot of sauces, vinegars, seeds, nuts, fresh herbs, dried herbs, all those things that really can change the direction of pre-cooked food.
I was thinking you could make big batches of things, like a bunch of different things, and then put it in smaller portions in the freezer. And that way you can kind of take it out as you need it.
Yeah, the other thing too is that, like this that I just did, if you really wanted to add an extra layer, you could take these 3 vegetables, you could toss a third in one spice mixture, a second group in a second spice mixture, and a third group in a different spice mixture. And I've done that in classes before just to show that it's the same cooking technique no matter how you're seasoning it. So if you had a head of cauliflower and you lived at home by yourself, cut it in half, maybe, or just half is sort of like curry flavored and the other half is more basic. And then you're still using up the cauliflower, but you kind of have 2 different options when you go in, depending on what you're feeling like. That might be the other way to do. It's another step, but.
Just a lot of more thank yous, many thank yous. And I think that's it. Do you 2 have anything else to add?
Thank you so much. Mindy, your presentation was great. I love working with healthcare professionals to translate all of the good advice into sort of stuff at home. So, find your dietitians. I always tell people I get a lot of people that come to my classes and they're saying, want more advice. Like dietitians are such an incredible resource. Find them in your healthcare system or your grocery store or wherever you are, and form a relationship. They are, the experts at helping you change your diet based on your health conditions, in some circumstances, or just like your own personal goals. So find them.
Yeah, because thank you. Appreciate that, Shauna. It was a pleasure working with you too, and love seeing your technique. And I don't know why I always break apart my cauliflower, but why don't I just chop it? It probably more flat surface to
Fast,
pan, right? So we learn things all the time too. But yes, because I think a lot of times over the years, people are nervous or they're afraid to meet with a dietitian because they think that we're gonna change everything or tell them they can't eat their favorite foods. But really, if it's done correctly, it's working with you and your preferences and your culture and making it work for you and gradually changing goals. So I think that's the best way to do it. And again, you made a great point too about not being, you don't want to follow people that scare you. And that's a very, very common thing right now that I just want people to watch out for, because that is the tactic, is scare them, make them worried about something, and then sell them the solution.
That's right.
There's so many products. I mean, I see them on TV and there's so many no one asked me about. I thought someone was going to ask me what I thought about Super Beets or or the green products, or what's the other, fruits and vegetables. And they're just all the nutrients that we get from our foods and the synergy of all those nutrients together when we eat foods, and the fiber, you just really can't get in a powder or a pill. Those would be what we call ultra processed. You can't get more ultra processed than some of those, supplements that are really broken down. And we don't even know if what it says on the label, if it's really in them, and what other ingredients are in there. And supplements actually can sometimes be more, harmful to us in that way. So I always say, be wary of that if they're selling. I might recommend to buy different products, but I'm not selling them. And I think that's just really important to watch out for some of those red flags. And someone just wrote, Mindy, I heard you say many times, eat the real food. I love people that hear me say, right? I think that's always the goal. I know it's not easy, but gradually trying to do that, I think really is the key. I once heard, I'll never forget because it just stuck with me. It was a professor in a class I took years ago that said if we were to put all the nutrients in fruits and vegetables into a supplement, the supplement would have to be the size of a hockey puck. And it's so true, right? And it tastes much better. Yeah, roast some vegetables and and I think you'll benefit and it'll be more enjoyable. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I always tell people, I made my living for 12 years, like I said, as a pastry chef in fine dining restaurants in Philadelphia. And it's just as important to me that you eat with friends and family, that you take the time to cook, and that you enjoy your food and you get pleasure from your food and comfort from your food. I think comfort food has become sort of like a dirty word, but like eating these vegetables with pita and hummus with my kids, in 20 minutes is a very comforting part of my day. So, don't let go of like your cultural traditions and like the way that cooking and serving your family and friends and eating together makes you feel. It's just as important part of our health as making sure we have the right balance of, vitamins and minerals.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. The stress sometimes overnight eating, it can be more harmful, to your health.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
I joke that sometimes my job in classes and in-person classes is to spend 4 hours getting people to relax. Because and then once they're relaxed, they realize they have a lot of the skills that I'm teaching, or they've already sort of had exposure to these techniques. And a lot of the stuff that I teach isn't new, it's not revolutionary, but it's just sort of giving people the permission to sort of enjoy cooking and having a community of people that they can ask questions to. So,
instead of thinking of it as a chore, which we often think, to try to think of it as a hobby. Or I once read something that really I thought made me think too. When I'm cutting those vegetables, I'm thinking, oh, geez, I'd rather be sitting down or doing something else, to really think about, where it grew, right? The nutrients that it provides, like to make it almost like a meditative, experience, get that out of it. And I know that sometimes really helps, or put on some music and try to make it enjoyable.
Yeah, we tell the little kids we teach that growing food on a farm and cooking food are kind of the two closest things you get to magic in your day-to-day life. So the ability to transform from a seed to a plant to something that you eat, and then to take that thing and transform it into something else so that you can eat it is pretty amazing when you stop to think about what it takes for that to happen.
Yes.
Well, wonderful presentation and really great questions. I did put the survey back in the chat box, and also the recording link. Again, that should be posted in the next week or two. I want to thank our wonderful speakers. I'm going to have you both back. I hope you'll both come back. And I want to thank everybody who attended tonight. Somebody's clapping. I'm going to stay around for the next 5-7 minutes, something like that, just to give you a chance to complete the survey. So feel free to do that. Mindy and Shauna, if you want to sign off, you can.
Thank you very much for this, Marsha. It was great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Yes. Thanks everyone for joining us.
You're a good,
have a nice night.
We're a good combo. Yes. I agree.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.